Here.
Mayor Holliday.
Present.
Mr. DeCanto.
Here.
Ms. McCarthy, absent. Mr. Lukens.
Here.
Thank you. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Do we have a consent agenda this evening, Mr. Menon?
We have warrants, if that's what you
Warrants, I'm sorry.
We do have some warrants here. I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate to $110,344.57 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts on this.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I also move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate of $36,181.09 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts on this.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I do believe we do not have minutes yet this evening to consider. I would also like to let you know that Julia Bradley is unable to be here this evening, as is Ms. McCarthy. So this brings us to our first session of public comment. Is there anyone who would care to address the school committee? Please come forward, state your name and address, and try to keep your comments to 2 minutes or under. Yes.
Ralph Orlando, 4 William Hall Drive, and as I've always stated, my comments are directly made to school committee members and school committee members solely. I want to take a few minutes to just call your attention to what I think you folks are responsible for by voting the last budget. A little brief historical perspective: in '06, 35 to 36 teachers were lost in the school. 7.5 of which came from the high school. We closed the school. We decreased administrative staff to improve efficiencies. And since that time, many of the folks here can attest to the fact that year after year, there were cuts after cuts after cuts of things. Now, that being all said, this year things played out a little bit differently, and we all are happy with the generous city contribution of $2.5 million. For over 4 years now, there has been on the NHS school improvement plan for FTEs to return those teachers back, because what was desperately lost was not teachers who could teach, to 25 to 27 kids in a math or science class, but teachers who could provide the electives for classes maybe that were in the single numbers. I, for one, understand the importance of unanimity and complete support for proposals such as the one you had put forth before you. I am a little bit concerned about the fact that meeting prior, there was some concerns expressed by Mr. Parent that were no longer vetted here, and we just went ahead and approved the budget without any more in-depth discussion other than that 0.5 FTE psychologist that was being eliminated. A lot of things came back into the district thanks to the $2.5 million, recognizing that a lot of that went to step increases for teachers' salaries. Some of you people trust me, and if you trust me, what has occurred will lead to the loss of some electives at the high school. Whether or not you have the VHS or not back online, and I'm not sure it was mentioned whether you do or you don't, there will be electives lost next year. And in the face of sums of money like that, .2 FTEs to the high school that has been desperately asking me for 4 FTEs for the last 4 to 5 FTEs for the last 4 to 5 years is a little bit disconcerting to me. Now, we all periodically have to self-reflect, and I actually do it daily. And I'm hoping that some of you people will take some time to do that, because I think it's very important. Because as I email you many times, in the words of General Patton, if everyone's thinking the same, someone ain't thinking. And I have some concerns about that. Now, each and every one of you on the 1st of June will be walking into the stadium in scholarly robes at another NHS graduation. And so that may be a good time for you to self-reflect. Because I hope to God, some of you is going to start to think and ask the questions. Because you cannot continue to do what's going on at the high school year after year. And I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment at this time? Thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item, I'm going to turn this over to the superintendent. It's FY15 budget debrief.
I thought that while it's still very much fresh in our minds, that it was a good time to begin to talk about changes that people would like to make for next year. I know I have a couple of suggestions to make, but I also think that it's important that the school committee have a dialogue as to what changes you would like to see as we move forward. One of the major changes that I would like to see is that I have spoken already with Mike Parent and with Beth Rossi about moving the course selection process up so that we can have data that will identify, particularly at the high school, exactly what courses students have selected, and the scheduling process would be earlier, so that we can be making budget decisions around data that we have. So that's one of the things that I would like to institute for next year, which would mean that we would move the course selection process up during the year. It's going to mean that Mr. Parent is going to need to switch some things around. In order to make that happen, 8th grade teachers will need to make recommendations much earlier, but I believe that that will help us to have accurate data around the number of teachers that we need and the number of course sections that we need. As Mr. Parent works on that right now, there are still some questions there. He has a little bit, we have built some FTEs into the budget so that he can use them where he needs them. But I would like to have much more solidified data in the future. And I think that we could all make some good decisions around it. The other thing that I am asking the administrators to do now is to begin to put together what are the things that they are already seeing for the 16 school year. What do we want to be prioritizing for not only for the 16 school year, but even for 17? What's our plan moving forward? So that we can begin talking about that now, we can begin planning around that now. We can begin to educate the community about what are the things that we are looking to add and or develop, the programming that we are looking to develop. And I just think that it makes sense to plan beyond more than 1 year as we're thinking about the budget process. I know that Mrs. Lysick and I have talked about our format. There are some tweaks that we need to do there. As you know, we did a few things that were different this year. For the most part, the feedback I've had from members of the school committee is that you liked the organization that we had in terms of each of the schools reporting. But those are some suggestions that I would certainly have moving forward, and I would look to know what other suggestions school committee members would have.
So I'd like to open up the discussion to the school committee members as to ideas you have about improving the process. Mr. Decanter?
As I look back on the process, I think there's one area in which I think we need to strengthen our our planning, and really, it will come by planning earlier, and it will come by using a foundation for the planning in the form of a strategic plan. And that word that I'm looking for is context. I think we need to do a better job of presenting and discussing the context in which we're recommending some of the things that we're doing. Some examples, some of those contextual things are as easy as having a clear comparison to what we did last year or this academic year in terms of what we were spending in this area. Not necessarily what we budgeted for it, but what the actual spending is in that area. That was something that Mike and I had asked for a couple of times, and we began to get in the last iterations of the budget, and I thank you for that. And that's one of the things that I'd like to see strengthened, that whenever we present something for the 16 year, we also say, okay, year-to-date, 15 year, and actual 14 year, so that we have an idea of the trends and how we've been spending in that way, because that's one of the areas in which it becomes very easy for us to identify some of the things that Dr. Orlando may have been speaking about, that there are gaps that we're not addressing, or that there are gaps that are getting worse. And so that is one of the areas that I would look in the context. I enjoyed and I liked the write-ups that went with the each individual school presentation this year. But I would like to give ourselves the time to make it a dialogue and not just a presentation. Because I think what we saw was a development of a budget which is trying to equal the services from one year to the other and tweaking them in some cases. But I don't think we had the discussion of, well, what does the community want? Maybe talked about, oh, we've got to go out and get foreign languages. And then in the back of our heads we say, yeah, but if we get them, where are we going to put them? And so that kind of discussion, I think, where we talk about the context of some of the things, I think is very important. And I think this is a learning year for the superintendent and for Mrs. Lysick to be doing it on their own. I think they did a great job. But I do agree that this is a time to pick and poke at the kinds of other things that we would like to see going forward. And so I guess context and long-term, because that's putting into the context of the future and where we want to be.
One of the things that was a goal of mine was to really get some more parental involvement, and I think we did that this year. Certainly not as much as I would like to see, but I think it's a beginning, and I think that we've developed a base of parents that are interested and that will continue to be interested in what we're doing. So I think that's an important aspect as we move forward too, is making sure that I am regularly providing parents with updates, whether it's through PTOs, through school councils, through the website. I mean, I think that there are a lot of ways to communicate that in the future.
Mayor?
And I think one of the things that I've previously mentioned, but I believe it is time, and I think we have the right players on the city council and here on the school committee to do a joint workshop, which we've never done before. And I know that there's a lot of interest on the part of the school city councilors to participate in a much deeper level than they have before in the schools. And I think that helps to begin talking about 2, 3, 4-year plans and how we can identify what we want our schools to be, and how we can begin planning for that, and looking at, all right, if we are going to target a date of putting X in place, what are the kind of revenues we need in order to make that happen? And we can begin to sort of plan out and work on I think a much shorter, workable strategic plan, which is, I think our last strategic plan was just unworkable. It's just collecting dust. I think, you pick a limited amount of goals and objectives you want to work on, and you make them happen. So make it a workable plan. So I'd like us to, really seriously put schedules together and throw out some dates and have something in place before school returns in September, where we have completed, couple half-day workshops, evening workshops, whatever works for people's schedules, but I think we need, a good chunk of time together to be able to, work through some of these processes. I think in terms of the budget, it's difficult because, we're always waiting for House 1 to give us our numbers, because that's where we start to build our budget. But we do know that, 85% is salaries, so, we have to sort of figure out what are we going to do with that 15%, and is there, what is it that we're going to need? And, it just, it was a little more delayed because we were dealing with a lot of financial issues. And so we, weren't able until, a few weeks to really put the number forward, because it, took time to try and find the extra money on the city, from the city resources to, be able to increase allocation to the schools. And I'm pleased we're able to do that. And, looking at, Brown School Adaptive Reuse and, the Kelly School and what we're doing there. And we need to talk about some other strategies in terms of revenue for the schools. So.
Thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, thank you. I really, I sort of align myself with Nick about the area I think that we will focus on in the next budget process. The two areas. One is getting the data that we need to help inform decisions, but also finding ways to engage the community and parents and everybody in the process, whether that starts at school council with some expectations on the school councils, or we find other ways to create dialogue. I think that on the one hand, I very much appreciate it, and we'll talk in a moment about why I appreciated it, the way that things went this time. But I also think now that we sort of know what works, what's helpful, what's a good way to frame conversation, I think the community, we need to find ways to involve the community. And it's not that easy, because it's something we've been struggling with for years and years and years, and we've gone back and forth in all different ways. But I think it's a worthwhile challenge. I think it's a worthwhile struggle, because people own the process if they're engaged in the process. One of the things that I really appreciated this time was that we were able to produce a budget that targeted real needs that were identified by the leadership team as a group, there were some trade-offs there within the team. Ralph had certainly referenced one that he was concerned about, versus sort of historically, we've talked about our needs as if they were wishes, and then tried to hit a number, as opposed to saying, oh, this is what we need, and how do we hit the number that is our needed number for this year. So I really appreciated that very much. I think that's a really good way to approach it, and the more that is informed by strategic planning, the more that is informed by data and research. And I think the more that is informed not only by an engaged leadership team, but an engaged community supporting that leadership team, staff, parents, even students, I think that the process continues to improve. But this was a very significant budget year for us, and I appreciate the help from the city. I appreciate the real, genuine interest on the part of the city council. The areas of improvement are areas that we always struggle with, but I think we've got a much better foundation for engaging now. So I appreciate that, as frustrating as some of it was. I mean, I think, if I could just give you just sort of 30 seconds of history, historically in the years when I first started on the school committee, the perception in the community was that regardless of what the community had to say, the budget was always a done deal, that feedback was never really taken into account. Why bother? Because what gets presented is usually what passes. And I don't want to hear that again, because I think that there was some merit to that. And, you know, there's the step of hearing what people are thinking, and then there's the step of identifying those things that make sense for us to do, that we can do, you know, even if it means we have to pivot a little bit. There are both of those things, but I just really don't want to go back to, that was really not fun to hear. And to try to believe otherwise was a hard thing to do, sitting here, you know. So that's part of historically why I really just want to see the engagement of the community, and I know that we're going to work on that, you know, as a really high priority in the next process. So I appreciate it.
Mike?
I agree with a lot of the sentiments that have been shared. I mean, to me, I think that the most important thing is making sure that we are able to articulate and gain alignment for a long-term strategy. You know, what do we want our schools and our school district to look like a year down the road, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, and even considerably longer. You know, I think once we have that articulated, then the budget really is a vehicle to fund the priorities that are behind that strategy. And I think, you know, I think we need to take time and make sure that that strategy is the right one, and that it has support of the school committee, the administration, the teachers, the community, the city council, the mayor, everyone that's a stakeholder in it. And I think that to me is just essential as a first step in terms of improving the budget process. Once we have that, I think we need to make sure that the plan for the budget, you know, ties directly to that, and everything that we do ties directly to the strategic plan, as well as things that support the strategic plan, like the school action plans, the school improvement plans, the SWOT analysis that you've done previously, you know, public conversations and everything else. So that to me should be the clear next step in terms of improving the budget process going forward, is making sure that we are able to articulate a solid long-term strategy. And it, you know, I think just about everything else I would have to say supports that goal of building a long-term strategy. So ensuring that we have public involvement and input in terms of crafting that strategy. And you know, to me, the budgeting process is almost secondary to that strategic process, because once you have the strategy outlined and articulated, the budget just becomes a method of funding the most important priorities that are behind that strategy. And you know, I think that those discussions should start earlier, because people will have different ideas of what those top priorities are, you know, all of which ultimately support, you know, various long-term goals. But you know, again, as long as we are able to put that strategy together, then I think the budgeting process will fall in place, and we'll just have to make sure that we have plenty of time to facilitate those conversations.
Okay, with Steve.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, my comments pretty much reflect a lot that's been mentioned, but I do want to point out a couple of specifics. That I think, number one, we didn't do a good job this year identifying what our budget priorities were as a school committee. Hence, they weren't really done. I mean, we didn't have any guidelines. We basically rested on faith that we were going to get through, and as Mr. Menon has mentioned, and I'll second, thanks to the city for helping out. I think it's really important that as we look toward future budget processes, that we identify those drivers, such as a strategic plan, budget guidelines, and that help establish the school committee's fiscal priorities
and helps to direct the administration's thinking while developing a budget recommendation. And I also think that's going to bode well for how the city is going to move forward under the new charter, because one of the things that the new charter calls for is an annual budget meeting that basically will be a joint meeting of the city council and school committee to include the superintendent of schools before the commencement of the annual budget process that will review the financial condition of the city, revenue expenditure forecasts, and other relevant information prepared by the mayor in order to develop a coordinated budget process. And that can be found in section 6.2 of the charter. I think all of this is important because, you know, as the single largest cost center in the city, the schools have a special responsibility to consider its growing spending needs within the context of the financial constraints of the entire community. Having said that, establishing our school committee priorities also means that we should have a seat at the table, meaning 1, 2, or 3 school committee members should be at the table when the leadership team is talking about programs, so that we can hear that the priorities that we're advocating for, that hopefully reflect what the community wants, are being discussed and are being saved, if not enhanced. I felt this year's process, I think we left a lot of things on the table. I think we could have looked at a number of things relative to revenues, some I mentioned with respect to bus fees for parochial school children. Others might have been raising the custodial fee that we charge those who are going to use our facilities. Our fee is one of the lowest in the area. I also think we could have taken a better look at the whole fee structure in general, because I think fairness is important, and every year with increasing costs, somebody's either going to need some help, and if we don't bother to talk about it, then it's like we're not caring about it. So, and I also think that there's been a lot of talk and experience with high school athletics, head injuries, the importance of having trainers available for contact sporting contests. And I think as a school committee, we need to have that discussion, so we share with the community that we think this is important, that the health and safety of our student athletes are important. And encourage a requirement, for instance, where all coaches should be required to be CPR and first aid certified. Again, similar to what other members said, I'm happy that we have a budget. I'm happy that we didn't have to cut $1 million or more in services or personnel. I just think that we left some things on the table that we could have looked at a little more closely. Another thing that I'd like some more information on as we move into the year is more specifics on how cost areas like leave of absence and are going to be better managed, because that seemed to hit us hard this year. And also an action plan as to how out-of-district special ed placements are going to be better managed. We need to ensure that those vendors are supplying the right programs for the kids that we have out in those placements, because we ideally want to have those youngsters return back, to their school, to their neighborhood, to the least restrictive environment, and come with recommendations that we can follow so that we can replicate their success. So, again, I agree with a lot of that's been said. Short and long-term strategic plans are vital, and I agree that I think through that process, through the engagement of the community, we're going to have a better sense of what our priorities are, and as a committee, work hard to align those with the community and all the stakeholders.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Steve. I'd just like to bring us back for a minute in this process. When Susan came, she did an entry plan, and this week I've had the opportunity to go back and look at the focus areas for her entry plan. And I found that there were budget priorities attached to a lot of the entry plan things. And I think that we had a person come in to our district that we were looking forward to that has had a lot of experience, 10 years worth of building budgets. And I think that the superintendent went a different way in presenting us with a budget this year. I think that the mayor and the superintendent worked on parallel and intersecting tracks here, because in the past, it's been our modus operandi to wait for a budget figure from the mayor and work from that. I think this year, when the superintendent came in, she took an honest look at our needs and assessed them, and worked really well, I think, with the leadership team in talking about what we needed to do for immediate relief. And I think that worked out really well. I think for perhaps one of the first times since I've been on this committee, we had a fair assessment, or a more rounded, realistic assessment of where our district really is in terms of what we want and what we need and what we can provide. And I saw the city step up this year. I've seen, I think, a change being on the Joint Ed Committee and working with the city councilors. Mr. Menon's on that committee with me. There's a real interest there in all of us working together, and to not perpetrate a city side and a school side. And I just think that we had a real good needs assessment, and it came from a fresh set of eyes who had a lot of experience doing this. And I think we all understood where we were and how difficult things were. I frankly don't know what we would have done if the city hadn't come up with the money that we needed to get as far as we're getting. But I also want to say that we're still treading water. I think everybody has said there are things we need to bring back, and I really do believe, I'm going to go back to what Mike Lucan said, I really do believe that, I think everyone said it, a long-term strategic plan, and then prioritizing where we need to put money, and not just year to year. But I know Susan's working, and she presented it to us last year, the technology plan. And I know that that's going to be kind of a long-term plan. And I think we need to take more, we are going to be able to take a look at what we really need, if it's extra FTEs at the high school or more custodial help in a bigger school, because we have a clearer picture. I'd like to see the FinCom committee perhaps meet more often during this preparatory budget time so that we can do feedback. School committee it's not within our purview to get involved in personnel, but program is a different matter. I think that the way I believe the school improvement plans were woven into each section of the budget helped us greatly, rather than having perhaps SIPs all by themselves in a presentation form. I think it was all tied together nicely. I think now we are ready to begin earlier. Somebody said in the audience, we should be beginning next year's budget today, and I fully agree with that. And I think we've got some ways we can go. I really like the way the leadership team worked together this year to form a budget. I think everybody vetted what their needs were, and then you had open, honest discussions about, where we were going to put the money. So I just think the process this year, for me, I like the fact that we worked through what we needed. And I'm not saying that the city can come up with that kind of supplement to us every year, but it really went a long way for boosting morale. I think, the teachers in the schools are much more comfortable now. There's not that stress of where are we going, am I going to lose my job kind of thing. So I think we're on the right track. I want us to continue that and be as active as possible with the community as well. Bruce? In light of some of the issues that were raised and conversation, if I could prevail on the superintendent, as a result of the budget hearing that we had, things changed in the budget. And some of the questions that Ralph asked, he didn't know the answers to. I know that we presented them at the last meeting, but particularly the question about whether or not the virtual high school is there and what, if anything, was done to address the electives issue. If you could just sort of go over very quickly those two subjects, because that was an area in which the budget changed from what was presented at that hearing to what we finally voted on.
Virtual high school is back in the budget, and there's a total of 0.8 FTEs that are available to Mr. Parent at the high school for him to utilize for, in particular, that sophomore class and adding sections in the core areas. So there are, which means that there'll be a math, a science, a social studies, and English, that those will be available to him or where he needs them in terms of the larger class sizes. So that is in the budget for him to use. My purpose in just going back to my earlier comments, if I have the data much earlier, we can make good decisions around that, and I can come to you with confidence in saying we are going to need an additional however many FTEs in order to meet the needs of the classes that students have selected at the high school. I want to be able to give you that data and say, here are the needs that we have. So hopefully moving that process up is going to provide with that data, so for the future.
Anything else to wrap up? And if any committee member thinks of something after the meeting, please feel free to email either myself or the superintendent, and we can move on from there. Next item on our agenda, district determined measures update.
I thought it would be important, I asked Angela to not only for DDMs, but also the next item on the agenda, the math model curriculum units. I would like her to just bring you, I want to keep you apprised of the DDM process, because it is a long-term process, and she did a presentation to you much earlier, but I wanted to just keep you up to date on where we are in the process.
Okay, great. Well, we're really in the thick of the process now. DDMs have been developed by every content area or every grade level in the district, and we're currently in the process of reviewing those district determined measures. That means these assessments have been built. We've been working since January on this process, and teachers have been working in their professional learning communities or small groups of teachers collaborating together to do this work. So what I've given you, I just wanted to show you, because I showed you the timeline the last time I was here and an overview of what they are. This is the stage we're at, so this particular cover sheet that you see first in the little packet of handouts I gave you is actually the vetting sheet that's used for the review. This sheet is first used by the building administrators meeting with the teachers when they have their discussion around the district determined measure, and then it's used with the DDM review team afterwards. And feedback is given on the backside. There's a space for principal feedback, and there's a space for the DDM team feedback, and there's also a space here, as you see, to put in proposed improvements of the assessment. This is brand new to all of us. So, we're all learning as we move along. And we're going to learn more next year in the implementation of the first year. We're going to learn more about how we really do evaluate whether the district determined measure is one that is indicating the kind of growth that our students are making that we hope to see. So every district determined measure was handed in with a cover sheet, which was your second page. The third page is the DDM checklist. And these were the categories that we worked with the teachers on as they were developing the DDMs. The professional development was provided to the Curriculum Advisory Board teacher leaders and the administrative team, and then they worked with small groups of teachers around the development. So when they handed the measurement in, they handed it in with this checklist, and they had reviewed all of these things to be certain that they met the criteria, that the assessment met the criteria of a district determined measure. So the good news is we had a lot of assessments in place. A lot of the assessments we had in place, because as you know, I've come here and I've talked to you about this over the last several years, that we've been developing both formative and summative assessments. A lot of those assessments met the criteria as they were. Some of them needed to be adapted a bit to meet the criteria. And some of the groups of teachers decided to build from scratch because they didn't feel like what they had was going to give them the kind of growth information that they want. Because remember, that's the foundation of district determined measures. It's about measuring the growth of a student, not the achievement. It's really different, looking at where that student entered and whether they're growing through this process of learning. So I brought a few that I'm just going to pass around. I do need them back because we're still in the process of working with them. But I just thought sometimes it helps just to see one. So this is one, this first one that I'm going to show you is the math district determined measure for preschool. And I think that you will be kind of interested to take a look at that. So what the teachers handed in was the actual assessment. They handed in the protocol for administering the test, the scoring rubric that would be used for the test, okay? So that they're really thinking the entire thing through, because it is a common assessment, you need to have consistent administration, and you have to have consistent scoring, and we're still working out the details of who will score whose exams and all of that kind of thing. So there's still work to be done. So I wanted to give you one of those. This was an assessment that the preschool teachers worked on with Liz Kinsley, and wrote their own DDM for that.
And when we were reviewing it, we think it's a very strong one.
It's very strong, particularly when I think it'll be interesting when you look at that and you think these are preschoolers. And this has been implemented this year, and the students really met the mark. So it's very interesting. The other one that I brought, I wanted to bring a different kind, because in these assessments, you can make the assessment yourself. You can use a commercial assessment if it's well aligned. There's a variety of assessments you can use. So I brought another one, which is a 4th grade reading assessment, and this actually uses the benchmark assessment system, the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment system, and this was chosen for grades 2 through 4 to use this as their ELA assessment. The teachers were well-trained in this assessment, and they've been using it for several years now. And they feel like it provides them with really good growth data about where their students are as far as their independent and reading instructional levels. But the reason I'm sharing this one with you is because, you know, this has a proctoring protocol with it, but it also, on this page, when you get here, this has the instructional level expectations for reading that the teachers use to judge whether or not the student is growing. And this scale is kind of interesting because obviously this was developed by the group that developed the assessment, but it helps you understand there's a variety of ways to look at these assessments and determine growth. For example, on this one, 4th grade is highlighted, and where you see the highlighted line on there, that indicates what would be the grade level marker for 4th grade in reading. But with each assessment that's given, the expectation ramps up as the year goes along. So it's not as if you do your pretest in September and you just want to see some progress from that pretest. It's actually indicating the kind of growth that should be taking place as you move along. But as you look at this, you can also see that we're trying to determine, is it low growth? Is it moderate growth? Is it high growth? So as we look at a scale like this, you can say, all right, well, this is grade level, but if a student started here and they grow to here, that's pretty high growth, isn't it? If a student goes here and continues along the continuum at a consistent rate, that would certainly be moderate growth. If a student started here and moves here, we're looking at low growth. Okay, so there's just a variety of ways to be looking at this. I'm going to pass this one around as well because this one is looking at a commercial assessment and how a commercial assessment can be used as a district determined measure. We'll go this way with that one. And then I thought I would bring a high school sample and I would bring one out of the traditional content areas that you might be thinking about DDM because I brought this one for the performing arts and theater. And this is one that the team has worked very hard on. It is also a very strong DDM. And what you will see on here, this is a performance assessment, which is also acceptable as a DDM. And these are, they have developed a holistic evaluation rubric for this. So as the students are working through their theater production, they are being continuously evaluated, not only on the process that they're learning, but on all of the technical aspects of a production as well. So I'm going to give you that one because that's a high school one, and I thought that would just give you the flavor of what we're working with at this point. But all of the district determined measures were due on Friday. So the DDM team this morning was in my office, and we've got DDMs piled up everywhere and sorting through the process, and it'll be a 2-week review process. And then all of the DDMs go back to the leaders, the teacher leaders of these cooperative groups with the feedback. And they'll talk about that, they'll make any adjustments they want to make, and then those DDMs will be submitted back to us, and then we submit them to the state for implementation for next year. So that's where we are in the process right now. It's busy, and it's exciting though. It's really, it's very interesting to read through them. You know, one of the main priorities of the district determined measures is that alignment to the standards, all of the standards. And the teachers have really done a very good job. I think it's indicative of the work that's been underway all year in getting our alignment work done. So there's the update around DDMs, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have if I know the answers, because I am learning along with everybody else. So,
Angela, can you, I'm looking at this one, and there's a Part A1 and a Part A2. I'm assuming the A2 is the post.
Yes, correct.
it is.
And am I also to understand that, do we have to have DDMs for next year in all academic levels?
We
All
do.
subjects?
Mhm.
So science and social studies for the kindergartens and,
No,
Okay.
good question.
Okay.
I can clarify that. 2 DDMs per grade level.
all right, okay, I thought you
Okay?
said that.
Yeah, 2 DDMs per grade
And can we pick
level.
the subject?
You can. In
Okay.
the elementary grades, though, it is highly recommended that the subjects
and-
are math and literacy.
Right.
Because they're the foundational.
And I know you've already said this too, but when was the training done for this? Is that what you used the Wednesdays for?
We've used some of our Wednesdays for that, but actually the Wednesdays are used for the collaborative work of building the DDMs. A lot of the training was done with the Curriculum Advisory Board during our monthly sessions that we have with the Curriculum Advisory Board. And then the Curriculum Advisory Board goes back to the collaborative group of teachers and does the training with them, and then they do the work. And then they come back to us a month later, we do some more training, they go back.
So what if you don't accept a DDM?
Then we're going to work with that group to turn it around and get it to a point that it can be acceptable and talk about we had a couple today that were sent back, but they were sent back with extensive feedback that said this is what needs to happen,
Okay,
this is
okay.
why it's being sent back, please make these changes, resubmit.
And do you have prototypes from the state that you go?
The state has put out some examples of DDMs. A lot of the examples that the state provided were commercial assessments because it's new at that level too.
Right.
They are now collecting a bank of exemplars from districts who are willing to submit. And then those will be available for people to access as well. That bank has not yet been completed because everybody's in the process of building.
Can you give me a little idea of the percentage of commercial-built DDMs and teacher-built DDMs?
Well, I can give you a percentage of what the state has made available, but I think in our district,
I was only
in
looking
our
for
district,
our-
our district, I would say, from what I've seen so far, probably 80% of them are locally built.
Homegrown.
Yes, because remember, this is also the kind of progress that a student makes on this measure is also attached to the teacher's evaluation in
Correct.
saying, how is this teacher doing in moving students along in their growth? So it makes the most sense that you would want to establish the measure in-house and have it as well aligned to your curriculum as possible. Because, and the best way to do that is to build them in-house. But there are some commercial ones, some commercial measures that are very good and
Well, the
very well
benchmarks for
aligned.
Fountas and
Right,
Pinnell are-
exactly.
There aren't any better. I mean, they're
Right.
experts in their field. But, okay, what happens if a student doesn't show growth? How do we help that student?
Now we have the data to say in what areas is a student not
Right.
showing growth, what kind of intervention needs to take place so that we can get the student there. We also get the kind of information from this that tells us what students are already there
Correct.
and what students need to have an enriched curriculum to grow as well, because this is about everybody growing. So.
Good point. I didn't mean to leave anyone out. I just want to make sure we're following through and meeting the child where they are and moving them ahead. And that's the differentiated instruction and all of that. So, but I know that there was a piece of this, and Mr. Menon was on this, the teacher, the evaluation committee, and there was, the teachers need to agree with what the DDMs are, so they're vetted. I'm really glad to see this is working well.
And we are. We're all learning through the process, but the teachers have been the developers.
Now, these are by grade level, is that correct? Or
The elementary is by grade level.
Well, that's
The
a
middle and high
subject.
school are by content area.
Okay, so no one's developing their own DDMs in isolation?
No. even, our counselors are
Well, that's a
working
good thing.
together, our occupational therapists are working together, because anybody who is evaluated through the teacher evaluation or the educator evaluation system has to have DDMs.
Right.
So there are some that fit less into this particular vetting sheet than others. Today we worked with Barbara D, and we looked at some of the DDMs that have come in around special education, in individualized programs. We looked at some of our counseling DDMs together too. So, and they're very interesting, to look at what teachers have set as some of their goals and how the DDM connects to some of those goals too.
Is there any cost attached to any of this that we need to be aware of?
Some of the commercial DDMs certainly have a cost attached. There may be some professional development cost attached as we move along. I think, we're going to have to look at the time involved in this and how we provide adequate amount of time for the data analysis around this, because the assessment is only as good as the information that we get from the assessment, and then how we use that information to change our practice and support the students in the best way possible.
I'm really sorry, but I have one more question. When you do the post-assessment at the end of the year, what information is sent to next year's teacher?
That's a good question. What we've looked into is a software system that has a student analytics component to it. It is going to allow us to enter all of our student data that we have. So we will be able to download MCAS data, PARC data, all of our local assessments, our benchmark assessments, our DIBELS, any kind of data that we're gathering on the student. And we'll be able to analyze that data and get a better picture about how our students are performing as well as growing. And through this system, as the students move on to the following year, their data travels with them. And the next year's teacher can go in and look at any of the data that has been gathered on that student in all the previous years as they come to them. So,
Sorry.
that's okay. Those were all great questions.
Hi, Mike? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The last time we talked about district-determined measures, I asked the question about how engaged the teachers were in helping develop these, and whether they felt that this mandate was a burden, or sort of, how energetic they were, and how much they felt that these, would be adding value in the future. So, do you have an updated assessment as far as that goes? And I mean,
Probably this week they would say they're a very large burden because everybody just had a deadline to meet.
That's why.
And that's, but I think that a lot of our teachers have recognized the value that will come from these assessments. I had a teacher say something to me not long ago. It wasn't a teacher who was leading the process. It was a teacher who was involved in the collaboration, who just had like a little epiphany around the kind of information that might stem from using these assessments. And that teacher said, if we can get over the fact that this is a lot of work and move beyond that initial reaction, I think we're really going to realize that this can be transformative for us, both for the students and the teachers. And I'm hearing more and more comments like that. I think that, it is a lot of work.
Yep.
And everybody's got a lot on their plates. So that part of it it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to juggle it all. But the other side of it is it has a direct impact on what they're doing every day. This has a direct impact on them making good decisions about their instructional practice with the kids that are in front of them, and giving them good information about how a student is progressing. And that's information every teacher wants,
Yep.
because that helps them better address the student's needs.
Any other questions? That's great. Nice progress.
I also asked
Susan,
Angela
sorry.
to go ahead and to give just a brief update on the model curriculum units and what she is seeing with those and what our next steps are.
Right. Well, I'm going to talk specifically tonight, just briefly, and I'm going to hand this out too. It's just a one-page, just so that you don't have to take notes. Just my speaking points are right here, so you have them. Last time that Liz Kinsley and I came before you and we talked about math in the district, that was, I think, in March. We did that. And in that presentation, we had presented some district goals we had around math, and I put that on the top of this handout for you, just to remind you of what those overarching goals were that we had for the district. And all year long, we've been analyzing where we are in moving towards the implementation, full implementation of the new math standards, which are the Common Core standards, and how we are going to close the gaps that exist, how we're going to get the vertical alignment in place that is needed for us to do a really good job with that. And Liz has done a lot of research around that this year, and she came to me not long ago and asked me to take a look at the Engage New York model curriculum units. Because as we talked to you about the last time we were here, we had many teachers in the district who were implementing the Massachusetts model curriculum units, both in literacy as well as in math. And we got very strong feedback around the model curriculum units. The problem was the teachers would implement this model curriculum unit and there might only be one for that grade level. So, because that's how the state has developed them, they're not a year's worth of curriculum. They're one to serve as an example of how one might build curriculum around the new standards. And so the teachers were a little frustrated. They were like, well, that was great, but now I'm back to some of my other resources that are not well aligned yet. So Liz, came across the Engage New York model curriculum units, and as you know, New York is a little further ahead than Massachusetts in implementing the Common Core. And what New York has done is they have established model curriculum units for every year, K through 8, for the entire year's curriculum. So Liz said, I'd like to take a look at them and I'd like to try a pilot and to see what our teachers think about them. So that's what we've done. The pilot has been underway since January, and at most grade levels, K through 8 in the district, we've got some teachers piloting some of these Engage New York units. And so what I've provided you with is some feedback and observations. Liz has been doing significant observation and work with the teachers, providing them professional development and support as they've been working through it. And now that everybody's well underway, I too have gone in and made some observations and had some time to interview some of the teachers who have been doing the pilot and get some feedback so that we can hopefully make some decisions about the direction we'd like to move. The good news about this is they are available to the public, they are available to anybody, they are free. And this is, the teachers just keep saying that. Are you sure we're allowed to copy these? Are you sure they're free? And they are at this point. We also have resources like manipulatives and other resources that have come with the programs that were aligned to the Massachusetts standards that are very applicable to this. So this does have some budget attachment to it. There will be some additional resources that will be needed, but we have a lot of what we need already. So that's kind of exciting. But I try to align some of this feedback to the goals that were above here for you so that you could see how exciting some of the feedback has been around reaching our goals. So, some of the teacher feedback and observation is that there's been an increase in student engagement. The units are problem-based. They use a problem-based approach, which is a practice that we've been used to here in Newburyport over the last several years. One of the things that one of the teachers just said to me last week that she was so amazed at, and then I had several other teachers say the same thing, is students in my class that have had discipline issues have absolutely no problems during math since I've started to do this.
Why?
Because the lessons are so well differentiated and they're engaging and they are on the entire math period that they haven't had as much time to get distracted and move into other things. So I think that's a very interesting observation that came from this, one that was unexpected, but a good one. The thing that all of the teachers have consistently said is that the curriculum is challenging to all of the learners. It's really well differentiated, the way it's been put together. There's focus concepts for every year, or power standards, so to speak. Those things that really we want every student to master in the course of a year. And the way these units are developed is those concepts and skills spiral through every unit the entire year. So by the end of the year, that has been visited and revisited and applied a different way and visited again. And so there's multiple opportunities for practice for students who need to have some support around the learning, but there are also challenges for the students who are higher achieving built right in. There's multiple ways to represent the concepts, as well as encouraging those students to figure out the most efficient ways to solve problems. So the teachers have just been very excited about the level of rigor, the way it has ramped up the expectations. I think out of the half a dozen teachers I talked to last week, the majority of them said, when I first looked at it, I thought the expectation was too high. I was nervous. I wasn't sure my kids could do it, and they can.
And then they discover that.
And they discovered they could.
Level of expectation.
And on top of that, they talked to me about how energized they are. Because there's nothing more energizing than seeing your students growing and engaged and doing well. So the alignment is done. If this is something that we continue to have positive feedback on, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel here. If someone's done a really good job with this, then there's no reason to pursue it.
But I think we need to, truly vet.
We do.
And we need to do a very good analysis here to make sure that this is absolutely the direction that we want to go in.
Right.
So.
And this is just where we are right now.
Right.
Like I said,
Right.
and this is a handful of teachers, a little more than a handful, but
But you're piloting.
Yep.
we're piloting. There are some concerns that have been expressed that I put here also, and, professional development time is one, because this is new to everybody. And the teachers, all the teachers who are involved in the pilot have said one of the most valuable professional development time that they've had is collaboration time with somebody else who is also piloting. So they can talk about what their observations have been, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what they were confused about, what they found challenging. So, we would need to deal with that. If we would move in this direction, or whatever direction we move in, we will certainly, I will work with Liz, and we will develop a professional development plan that would accompany whatever the next implementation is going to be. Pacing has also been an issue, because it does have an increased rigor. And most of the teachers feel that once teachers and students have become familiar with the structure and the vocabulary, that the pacing will be much easier. Because when you're piloting like this, you say, okay, we're going to do this unit, in third grade. Well, these were designed to have kids K through 2 already practicing this. So these kids are getting in third grade first time. You've got to teach all the vocabulary. You've got to teach the structure of how the lessons are implemented. So they're taking longer than what the pacing guide states that it should. But in most instances, when I said to the teachers, if this were implemented across the board, do you think the pacing issue would be rectified? And they said absolutely, that they thought, that that's what they're dealing with.
Would this become our math program then?
If it were adopted.
No, I'm just, and how long is a unit?
It depends.
Varies on the subject.
It depends on the
Ballpark,
subject.
2 weeks, 3 weeks, month?
Yeah, it really depends. It could range for any of those. A week.
And-
Some are a few days.
And how do they build in the differentiation?
In a variety of ways. There's a variety of, I'm hesitant to say activities. I want to say more, variety of ways to engage the students in what's happening. For example, I was in a first grade classroom last week, and they were using one of the model curriculum units, and it was about place value. And of course, that's a really important
A whole year.
concept for children at that age. But they were working with tens and ones, and they were adding and subtracting at the same time rather than teaching it in isolation. So they immediately started to understand the reciprocal relationship
Families,
between
the number of
adding
families.
and subtracting, which was a beautiful thing to observe rather than now we're going to do all of our addition, and when we finish that, we're going to move on. So that was really interesting. But it didn't stop there. Then it moved on to money, because we were working with tens and ones, and the only coins students got were dimes and pennies. And the same concepts happen with money. So the concept just keeps being revisited in a number of different ways.
Repetition.
And so I think that the teachers are recognizing that too. There would be, one of the other things that I've heard some feedback about is logistics associated with organizing the materials, because they need to, we've put together binders of the teacher resources, but then the teachers need to copy anything that gets handed out to the students. And they do work from paper sheets, but these are not repetitive worksheets. These are what the next part of the lesson is going to involve. And so, but those things need to be copied, and there are some teachers are using their whiteboards, individual whiteboards with the students, because the students are all working on whiteboards and holding whiteboards up, and I saw that in every class as they work. So we might have some resources around that would have to be developed, but we would need to work through that.
Do you pre-test at the beginning of each unit?
The assessments are built right in, which is beautiful.
There
are assessments. Yeah, there's formative assessments. There's mid-module assessments. There's end-of-module assessments that are all built in. They've got exit tickets built into every lesson. So you're doing a quick formative before the kids leave every class to say, where are we?
You know exactly
where
they
are
are.
we for tomorrow?
Boy.
So, again, though, I mean, I think it's very important that we do a very thorough vetting job, because we need to, as we become more planful, we need to know what are the resources that we will need, what will this look like rolling out, what professional development resources will be needed. So, I mean, I think that the way that this is, the way the pilot's been run has been done very well, and I think that we need to see it through and see where we end up.
Good work.
And I really do want to give Liz Kinsley credit for the way the pilot has been rolled out. It was really,
She did a great job.
something she researched, something she came forward, said I'd like to do it, and move forward with it. So I really commend her on the way that she's approached this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, and I'm just going to hand this around, so as we talk, you can look at this. This is one of the units. I did bring a unit, just so you could see. And this is a first grade unit on patterns and place value. But this gives you an idea of what it looks like, and we can kind of just pass that around, and people could take a peek at that, just so you can see.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm looking at the next items on our agenda, and 9, 10, 11, and 12 require a vote. So I'm going to turn this back to you to explain to us what's happening here.
I wanted to, and I sent an email earlier to you just to give you a little bit of background in this. As part of the requirements for the Massachusetts Collaborative High Performance Schools and the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, we need to have these policies in place and demonstrate that we are saving energy, using green products, asking vehicles to shut down rather than idle. And this is all documentation that's required by Massachusetts Building Authority, and it's all tied back to our reimbursements of 2%, which are significant dollars. It ends up being approximately $720,000 on the Bresnahan project and about $520,000 at Knockmolen. And we are following through, and these are good things to do anyway. We want to have, schools that are cleaned with green products, and we don't want vehicles idling, and we want to have a process for what needs to happen in terms of cleaning. And we need to be paying attention to
Just looking at some of the things, I'm sorry.
we need to be paying attention to things like, we no longer want to have, microwaves in classrooms and little refrigerators, and we want to be much more energy efficient. So all 4 of these policies describe all of that information to you.
Are these policies that we developed internally as a facilities department, or are these policies that we basically took from the MSBA or some other organization?
It was a combination of both. So, in terms of our cleaning policies that you saw, that was an internal, those were internal. Those were developed internally. The other ones come from us also working with the consultants on the building projects and informing us as to the things that we need to do in order to qualify for the lead and for the mass chips. So.
Fascinating reading.
I was laughing at, wait a minute, the mopping,
Yeah.
then let
cleaning
things dry
closet.
and put furniture back. I'm like, I could use this at home.
We should post it on the website and make it available to the community.
Do try this at home.
I'm just glad fish tanks will still be allowed.
That's
Yes,
right.
fish tanks will still be allowed, yes.
Now, are we aspiring to these, or are we there?
These are the things that we want to.
Okay.
These are required in order for us to receive the reimbursement. We have to do these things.
And do we have enough personnel to, I guess I'm looking at all the ones that have to do, well, one thing I'm looking at is the custodial level is.
So, all right, so just looking at the anti-idling policy or anti-idling policy, school zones. So what is a school zone? Because, commonly, for instance, at the Bresnahan School, there's a bunch of cars that go up and down North Atkinson Street. So where is the school zone on North Atkinson Street relative to Bresnahan?
I'm not sure that I know that we will have to post
Yeah,
where the school zone will be. I don't know exactly
okay,
where that will be yet,
okay.
but we will have to post signs that
Okay.
indicate that if you are in that area, you will have to shut
Right,
down.
okay. And I assume there'll be some effort to notify and educate parents about this too?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, because, we can vote all the things we want, but if people aren't aware of them and don't follow them, because I dare to say there's some idling going on where people waiting for kids to get out of school.
Especially in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question, though. I mean, for the buses, I mean, it says in the policy that there's a 5-minute limit on idling, and otherwise the drivers will be allowed to come into the school on
get
on
warm.
cold days. That's not going to be possible with parents, so.
It could be. And the other thing that a lot of effort went into was redesigning the whole traffic pattern around the West End School as part of the design process, so that we don't fall into a situation where you've got people, halfway up to High Street.
Yeah.
It's-
Well, just this morning, was I walked with the kids from, because it's walked or bike to school,
Yeah.
and I walked with a group of students from Atkinson to Bres, and we walk, and you feel like, all the kids, and they're walking, and you walk into the driveway of the Bresnahan, and there's 12 buses with pollution, diesel fuels, and I'm like, really?
After all that fresh
After
air.
all that, So I think these are policies that they are really compatible with our philosophy, our being a designated green community, the 20-year sustainability initiatives that we're working on. As there's just a tremendous amount of effort and work that's been going into our sustainability and green initiatives, and makes sense that we, also, now that we are increasing the efficiencies in our schools, that we also adopt these policies to go along with that. I was very pleased. Well, I knew we had to do this, but I was very pleased that these were ready.
Do we need to vote each one individually? Or can we do them as a package?
I think we should do one individually, personally.
I agree.
I move that we, Mr. Morrison, come here. I move that we approve and endorse the plug load reduction plan as presented by the superintendent.
Second?
Discussion? Can we we don't need a roll call vote for each of these, is that correct?
I don't see why we would.
Steve, what do you think?
No, I think you just vote them up or down.
Thanks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I'll move that we approve the resolution on Energy Star equipment and appliance purchasing as presented by the administration.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I move that we approve the green cleaning policy as presented by the superintendent.
Second?
Discussion?
I just have one question on that, and I know we're moving toward using products that are green. There's some schools that actually use a color-coded, I don't want to call them rags, but color-coded cloth system where certain colors, certain cloths used in certain areas, like you don't use the bathroom cloth on top of the desk. Yeah. Does anyone know if we have that in place here?
I can't speak to that specific. I can certainly find that out, but what I can tell you is that we use all green products in our schools currently.
Right, okay,
So,
okay.
but that I can find
Yeah,
out.
I mean, if you could check that out, I know there's some schools that utilize that, and it just makes the infection, dealing with infection control that much easier.
I will
And
update
I
you.
definitely support it if we went that route.
I would support it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously carries.
I move that we accept the anti-idling policy as presented by the administration.
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Superintendent's report.
Okay. I know that, that Mr. Cole had already let folks know, but I wanted to just share with you an email that Mark Landrigan sent out to some teachers at the high school. And he says, "I just wanted to update you all on my winnings. Today I placed first of over 400 students at the 65th State Science Fair with my teachable robotic arm. In addition, I won a scholarship for $40,000 to Regis College.
Oh my gosh.
Also, I got the 2014 American Society of Safety Engineers Award, and Lauren Healy from Newburyport got second place. Thanks, everyone, for your help.
I love that he wrote that.
That's really nice.
That's great. Congratulations.
So, pretty exciting.
I'd like to see a demonstration at a future
Absolutely, I'm
school
sure that we
committee
can make that
meeting.
happen.
I think that'd be great to see.
And,
I think he'd be excited to demo it for you.
yeah, I'm sure he would. And then just a couple of other things that I wanted to update you. Olivia Shea received a $1,000 scholarship to Montserrat College of Art pre-college summer program for the best in the show, and you can see some of the work around this room. It's
Very gifted artist.
pretty extraordinary. And Jacob Fisher was the recipient of the Hempel Family Foundation Mass Art Summer Pre-College Resident Program. And this is a $4,500 scholarship. He competed against Essex County art students, all juniors. And I'm delighted to let you know that last Friday, we had the library dedication from the Morrill family for the Peer Technology Support Desk and computer. And the Morrill family was so pleased with the activity that they saw going on in the library that day that Mrs. Morrill returned that afternoon, and will be presenting the high school with another $6,000 donation.
They're so generous to our community.
And I have to tell you that I was able to attend, and it is, that library is the hub of the school. I have to tell you that. There is so much activity, so much research going on in there anytime during the day. It is, if you have an opportunity to come in during the day and see the library in action and the level of activity that's going on with students engaged and doing research, and teachers utilizing the technology that's there, it's very energizing to be there. Let me just put it that way. So that would be my superintendent's report.
Can I add one thing to it, just regarding Mark? Because this Friday, he's off to the
Oh, thank you, Steve.
Intel International Science and Engineering Fair in Los Angeles, fully paid by Intel. It's the world's largest high school science research competition. Intel International Science and Engineering Fair is a program of the Society for Science in the Public. This year, approximately 1,600 young scientists will compete, selected from over 400 affiliate fairs in more than 70 countries, regions, and territories. Prizes range anywhere from $500 to $75,000. And usually, if you get one of the upper level prizes, money also goes to the student school as well. So,
Source of
wish him
revenue.
the best of luck.
That's
Absolutely.
great. Yes, Mayor.
Just a couple of things. One, I wanted to report that last Thursday was the first ad hoc committee of the regional special ed group that Senator Ives has pulled together. And unfortunately, Superintendent LaCar and I had to leave early to come back here for the Art Honor Society inductions, but we stayed for the first 45 minutes, and I think this is going to be a very worthwhile. A lot of good opening conversations about the struggles that are not unique to Newburyport, and to listen to all the other school districts reporting out on the same kinds of issues, exactly the same kinds of issues. So I'm pleased that Senator Ives has brought this group together. We meet again on May 28th. I don't have the date or time, but the time yet, but anyway, so we'll keep you up to date on how things move forward with that. And the other piece, I wanted to just announce that there was a essay writing contest for grades 1st through 8th that was part of the Literary Festival, 250th. It was a theme of the 250th anniversary of the city, and I was really fortunate to be able to pass out awards to the students, and I just got all of their essays, and they have been uploaded on the city website, and they were just phenomenal.
Nice.
So I would ask that you take some time to read these great essays and the vision of what Newburyport, they also talked about what Newburyport's going to look like, you know, in the future. So it was.
Is that on the city website, you
Yeah.
said?
Yeah.
That's
I think the other piece is, one other thing is that we are putting forward a transfer before the city council on Monday night for $250,000, which will be accompanied by a memo from the superintendent that looks like that's where our deficit for FY14 is at this point. We might have to make some adjustments based on some, ancillary legal fees or some other things, but at this point, based on the extra Chapter 70 money that was transferred at the, around February, and with the administration holding the line on the budget this year, at one point we were afraid we were looking at upwards to $750,000, $800,000. And so at this juncture, it looks like the transfer is only $250,000.
And that's our, I want to say, that's our best guesstimate at this point.
Right.
That can go up or down, and we obviously will keep a very close eye and keep the city informed, but.
And so we just, at this point, because we're reaching the end of the fiscal year, we really wanted to get that transfer moving forward, because it will certainly be vetted by Budget and Finance as we go forward. And the full city budget, including the schools and Whittier, will be presented to the city council next Monday night. On the 12th, I will be doing a short budget presentation, and then workshops will be established, and certainly would encourage all school committee members to pay attention to the workshop calendar that will be posted on the website, and to please attend obviously the school workshop, as well as the date they set to finally review the budget, which I'm hoping will be in the second week of June. And so that's where we are.
And that was May 12th.
Yes, it's next Monday night.
And then it's going to committee, and then,
What happens is that they accept the budget, I do a short presentation, sort of a big overview of the budget, and then they set up budget workshops for every single department,
Okay.
including the schools.
Yep.
And so it's a pretty extensive
Okay.
process that runs through, most of May. And then, once they complete all the workshops and they receive all the additional supportive documentation that they require, the budget typically is passed the second week of June.
okay,
So, things are good.
thank you. Very nice. We're going to move on now to subcommittee reports. I'll begin. The joint ed subcommittee met this evening. We did a review of the school budget FY 15. We updated the city councilors on the school lunch program deficit. We talked also about, we started a discussion, and this was Mr. Menon's idea, about the growing trend in overcrowding at the high school. And just to bring that to the forefront, so that the city council is also aware that we're maxing out at our high school, so.
Future planning.
Future planning, thank you.
And what I would add to that-
Some trailers.
Yeah, trailers. We use the old Brez.
I was just joking.
Yeah, no, no.
I'm joking.
I would add to that we're also acknowledging
Have you
that
put the
that
labs
it's
in
going
to
there?
start getting very crunchy at the knock as well, so.
Oh, that's
we're
true, sorry.
doing a real plan for
Right.
this. The freshman class this year was significantly larger than last year's freshman class, and we anticipate the next one as well will be large, so.
Place-based education, get them out of the classroom.
That's
Yeah.
right. Did you want to say something? Oh.
That'd be-
FinCom, Mr. Cole,
No meeting since last reported.
are we going to schedule one shortly?
Sure. Sure. If there's some fiscal things to go over that, I don't want to take away from anything anyone's doing in the finance side of things, but if there's some fiscal things to get out, I don't know if like I said in my comments about the budget, we didn't have a real discussion about fees. So, I mean, one fee that we tried to adjust last year at this time was the lunch fee up a quarter. I don't know if we want to do that again, so,
I think,
Yeah.
I do think we should have that discussion.
Yes.
okay,
All fees.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
okay,
We're going to do that the city side too, probably this summer.
okay,
We haven't looked at fees in 4 or 5 years.
okay. So,
And considering that the, the deficit, the lunch deficit came up, I'd like that to be a topic for
Yeah.
discussion for us soon.
And an update on where we are with that.
yeah,
Well, yeah, yes. Policy,
Council has met, before Nick leaves, I would like to get some time with him and I'll get a hold of Audrey. Policy for dates for the next couple of weeks to meet.
and curriculum,
Curriculum will meet May 20th at 5:30.
thank you. Any other updates for the committee?
Terrazzo floor is looking,
You didn't send a
Beautifully.
picture out.
Oh, I forgot. I will do that. I have some pictures that I will send out to the committee. I forgot.
which
I'll
is
do that.
beautiful.
Yeah.
The library media room
Yeah.
was on Facebook. It looks
Yeah.
beautiful.
coming
It's just
along.
beautiful.
It's coming along, it's a beautiful
It
building.
was really nice to see the teachers who went in
Oh,
and saw the
yes.
buildings
We're
for
so
the first
excited.
time. They were
We're so
so excited.
Yes.
They were really excited. We probably should set up something to begin moving towards preparing for your evaluation.
We are. I have, just to let committee members know, it was our thought to run a workshop on the superintendent's evaluation, and Susan and I, and the mayor certainly, will meet within the next week, because there are certain steps that the superintendent needs to take before we begin our deliberations. However, the problem is that Susan's assistant is away for the next 2 weeks. So we may need some help in kind of formatting things so that we're all working off the same piece of information.
Okay.
So,
You can make that work.
all right.
Get to the grocery store.
Oh,
A handout on the second handout you gave us.
Sure.
I think that's it for this evening. Could I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second? Discussion? All those in favor?
I.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at the last